So the big question is, does cold emailing work? If you basically do a Google search on it, you'll hear a lot of people say, no, it absolutely doesn't. It's a horrible idea, blah, 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 blah. And truth be told, a lot of people are saying that because they've had very, very bad experiences with it because they haven't been doing it right. But if you look at almost all the major corporations out there, all the big ones out there, pretty much all of them, or at least a huge amount of them, have done cold emailing and have done it very, very well. In fact, I know several of them have almost exclusively started and basically built up their business as a result of cold emailing. Now, before we jump too far in, you might be wondering, well, what do we mean by cold emailing? So what the definition of cold emailing is, it's basically where you take lead that you find online, like let's say you're searching for shirt makers because you want to make an offer to shirt makers or florists or whatever it might be. And you find this business lead, you find some contact info on a site, and you send them a cold email. So you reach out, you send an email to them, and they don't know anything about you at this point. You don't really know much about them other than, what you see or what is essentially info you pulled up right there. So it's a cold email because, they're not really warmed up to you yet. This is a lot different than, if you have a bunch of leads that have opted into a mailing list of yours. Those are warm leads. They know you, they might be more likely to buy from you, or they often are far more likely to buy from you. But, cold emailing as a whole can work, but you definitely have to go about it right. And before we dive into some of the best practices and all that, I'll let Sean talk a bit about some of the results or some of the stuff that you can do with cold emails.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. One of the things I also want to address, because I think people might have the question, well, I've been always told that spam is illegal. And in America, spam is not illegal, and spam is simply unsolicited email. You can send unsolicited email. You can't send email that doesn't meet certain requirements, which are very simple. It's basically don't be misleading, explain it's an ad, add in your contact information, your name and address for your business, etc. So in America, sending to Americans and American companies, it's completely legal to send unsolicited email, which is why all the big companies do it, because they wouldn't do it if it was actually illegal. Some countries, this may not be okay, so you need to check on the laws of your countries because we don't know all the rest of the countries. But in many of them, this is absolutely fine and legal to do. And if you do it, you're going to get great results if you do it the right way. So let's talk about some of the results and what you're trying to accomplish with cold email. Now, usually you have something to sell to businesses when you're trying to do cold email rather than trying to reach individuals. And when you're trying to sell to businesses, you need to find, first of all, who do you want to send an email to? You got to target it a little bit usually, or have a reason why you want to email them, whether you're selling a piece of software or you're selling services or you're selling, a new dress line to people that sell dresses, whatever that might be, right? And once you figure out the target of what you're trying to reach and you've got your list, however you acquire that list, and we'll talk a minute about some easy ways to get access to really big, up-to-date list of businesses in different categories. When you have that, then what's your next step? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. So if you're a salesperson and you need to set appointments, you're looking to qualify people ahead of time, then you might send out a message that says, dear Mr. or Mrs. Business Person, I see that you're in the business of X and you probably use IT services, and we are an IT service company that can take all the headaches off your shoulders, and I'd love to have an appointment with you so we can show you how, we helped company ABC to cut their IT costs by 27% and raise their productivity level by 22%, right? Something like that. And, if you'd like to get more information, then, go to this form and you can have them do anything you want to at that form. Give you their contact information, set up a phone appointment with you if you wanted to do that. You could offer them a free video or training or analysis or report, whatever is appropriate for what you're trying to sell. And of course, all this is going to vary a bit depending upon what you're trying to sell. But you could go from trying to cold call businesses to be in a position where everyone you actually talk to on the phone is pre-qualified. They know what you're offering. They think this probably fits for them because they have already registered to have a phone conversation with you. And the quality of your time spent with these prospects is going to be much, much better. And your sales conversion rate is going to be much, much better. Now, on the other hand, maybe it's you sell dresses and you're the manufacturer manufacturer or the distributor for dresses and you want to sell them to clothing stores. So you contact the clothing stores and you want them to come in and see your line of dresses, right? And therefore you might just send them straight to your website and say, hey, take a look at all this stuff. And your first thing you want them to see is the dresses you carry, and then maybe go through from there and give you their contact information. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. But the first thing is, how do you get their attention, right? When you send the email, because you want them to respond, you need to make sure it's tied into whatever the commonality is between their business and your business, right? What you're doing with it and what's in it for them. They're going to get out of this, and then make them an offer and tell them what you want them to do next. And as I said, so that could be go to my website and see what's there. Go to my website and get a free report. Go to my website to set up a free consultation or a free demonstration. And if you do that, then you're going to be able to generate qualified leads from contacting these people. And that's going to really shortcut your business and going to allow you to reach a lot more people, because one of the things about emailing is, unlike cold calling or even, it's not one-to-one, it's one-to-many. So you can send one email and test some and find different ones that work better for you and use those again and again. But you can take the same message and very quickly send it to dozens or hundreds of people, and then talk to the people that raise their hand and say, hey, pick me, I'm qualified, I'd like more information about whatever it is that you're doing, as opposed to just one-on-one. And the other thing is that, unlike sending something in the snail mail, right, whether it's a postcard or a letter, this is way, 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 way cheaper, because you're not spending 75 cents or $1 per mailer to get that out. You're spending pennies, but almost nothing, to be able to reach out and touch a lot of those people. Now, there are some best practices that you'll want to follow to get best results and to be well received by people when you get emails. Brian's going to tell you about those in a second, but just think yourself, how many unsolicited emails as a business owner do you get right now from companies and people that have products and services they want to sell to you? And look at those and say, wow, this one got my attention, this one didn't get my attention. Here's what really kind of works in my industry. And Brian's going to add on to that.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to like the best practices. And I think a lot of people that have a bad taste in their mouths from when they try to do cold emailing, they tended to try stuff that, if you're in the industry, you pretty much know will fail from like the get-go. And that's trying to buy like 1 million leads at once and mail them in like a single day with no experience in like the mailing industry. That's not going to work. That will get flagged in a heartbeat. Oftentimes, even if you have 1 million legit leads, the way you mail cold email leads is a little different than if you have like, 1 million person list. You have to be a little more careful. You have to know what you're doing a little more. But having said that, a lot of the places that you can buy leads from, quite a few can be kind of scammy or crappy leads where, if you buy 1 million leads, it might be 1 million bots or 1 million fake leads or tons of fake leads and very few real ones. So you have to be a little careful there. There are definitely, some legit places out there to buy leads from. But, the first step is make sure you have good leads. And the second step is, don't try to mail 1 million leads at once. Don't even try to mail like 100,000 leads at once, or even tens of thousands of leads at once. There are ways of doing that, very, very advanced ways, but that's usually for larger businesses that have like tons of people monitoring all this stuff. And for like most mom and pops or, small to medium sized businesses, or even ones doing millions of dollars a year, you want to kind of start smaller and targeted. So if you do anywhere from like as low as like a few dozen up to hundreds of leads a day and work your way up to like 1,000 or 2,000 leads a day, that can be a pretty good start right there. But you want to make sure to basically target them. Again, you don't want to mail 1,000 random leads out there that have nothing to do with your product or service. You want to make sure that it ties in well. You can also personalize those a little bit more. So like, let's say you have an offer that applies to a bunch of businesses. Well, one day you can basically tweak the message to fit for dentists. Like if you're selling like an SEO service, let's say, you can have an email that basically talks about SEO for dentists. And, the next day or the next week, it can be chiropractors. And, so you kind of pin it down and kind of narrow it down, or even by location, you can say dentists, in Wisconsin or Florida or Georgia or wherever it might be right there. You also want to make sure that you do stuff not to kind of send off any of the spam filters. This includes like trying to avoid certain language that might be likely to look like spam. Like if you use like free, in all caps and have like 1,000 exclamation points, that's going to send off some filters right there. You also want to make sure to not have too many links. Rule of thumb, and it can can vary what people say, like what you should do, but I think the rule of thumb is if you have 2 or less links in your email, and the less the better, because essentially Google and others, most likely they look at the number of links you have and say, hey, if you have 10 links in an email, probably an ad, you're probably trying to get a lot of clicks, you're probably trying to clickbait them. They tend to flag that stuff a lot more. Whereas if you have an email that, let's say, doesn't even have a link and it's just trying to get a reply back, that looks more like, hey, you're sending out a message, try and get them to write back, you're trying to interact with them, you're not trying to get them to click anything right there. That can look, a little better. Then again, if you just have one link, that can also be not too bad right there. You want to also make sure that, you follow the CAN Spam Act and all that. So like you have an opt-out link, you have, like your address and stuff on it. You're not trying to use tons of fake info and all this other kind of tricky stuff there. And, there are definitely ways of making that easy. So it's not like, you have to code all this stuff by scratch. We actually have, if you check out a link in the video description below, we actually have a tool that can actually find literally over 100 million business leads, where you basically type in a keyword and you'll find leads that basically match up. So if you're looking for dentist, you could type in dentist. If you're looking for florist, you could type in florist. If you're looking for hat makers, you can type in hat makers. Whatever it might be, you basically type in any kind of keyword you want and it will find all the relevant leads right there. We kind of built this up from scratch. But with that, we also include a special way of mailing them that tends to be like, again, much more compliant, much more white hat and all that right there, where you work kind of with Google instead of against Google on stuff. So if you're interested in any of that, make sure to check out the link below. We have a special deal for those right there. But the main thing with the best practices and all that is just use common sense. Okay, read the email yourself. If you were in the business's shoes that you're trying to reach out to, if you got it, would you respond or would you just toss it aside? That will probably eliminate 90% of the chances of it, being kind of thrown out or being flagged by filters and all that right there. But to ultimately sum this all up, does cold emailing work? Yes, but you have to go about it right. And if you do go about it right, it can literally start and make a business from scratch. So with that, definitely try it out. If there's any interest at all, definitely check out the link to Macroleads that we have below this video here. And with that, guys, best of luck with cold emailing.